All right, so welcome everybody to the first ever Traveler Chat slash Inter Miami podcast crossover episode. As I'm sure many of you know, I am Inter Miami CF Traveler, better known as IMCF Traveler on Twitter. Uh, Everybody calls me Trav, so we can call me that. We have Jorge joining us tonight as a co-host. And then very shortly, Callie from Black Herons United will also be joining us as a co-host. So how you doing, Jorge?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
I can't complain. It's, a nice Wednesday night. Inter Miami 2-1. Atlanta United with a big win over Orlando for us. And I guess technically Miami won today too, if you want to go by a technicality.
That's true. I didn't see it until this morning. I woke up to it and was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I can say I much rather would have waken up to it than stayed there until I think it was like 12:30 in the morning is when the final whistle was finally blown. So I'm pretty exhausted right now, if there's a way to put it.
That's totally reasonable. Yeah, I mean, I was really expecting the game to get called and then for them to pick it back up today, like midday or something like that. So I called it, went to bed, woke up, saw the good news, saw the clips of Higuain's goal, and was really happy. So made my morning a lot better.
It definitely made the 2.5 hour wait worth it last night. But let's get right underway. A very busy week for Inter Miami soccer. Miami played Saturday to a very disappointing and lackluster 3-1 loss up in Chicago, and then came back home on Tuesday, kicked off the game at 8 o'clock, played the first 45, and then sat in a 2.5 hour lightning delay before finishing the game at 11:45 to 12:30 a.m. and coming away with a very, very crucial and could be season-defining win at home against a ever so dangerous Columbus side. And now with some results tonight, Atlanta just only about 15-20 minutes ago beating Orlando, and now Miami controls their own destiny. On Saturday night, I know a lot of people were talking about how's Miami going to make the playoffs now. We're 5 points out, and we lost three straight. We're not making the playoffs. Miami controls their own destiny now and still has games against Orlando left, which now we can turn our focus to and is truly probably going to be the biggest game of this season. And pretty much at this point, as long as Miami matches either, well, as long as they match Orlando's record throughout the end of the year and beats them on that rescheduled game in October, Miami will make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's exciting, especially after the disappointment from the weekend match where they came out flat and after what was it, 10 days, a 10-day layoff before that match. I mean, they looked a lot like the team we saw for the vast majority of last year, just completely unable to do anything productive, no style. It was just a really disappointing flat performance. And so I think, for a lot of fans seeing that performance, um, especially given the series of losses that led up to it, I mean, with the Red Bull game, I think we all kind of write that one off with the red card, and how that turned that game. But all of the hope and optimism for the playoffs kind of felt stunted after that match in Chicago. But coming out, last night, doing what they did, playing, in the beginning of both halves, I think really showed kind of the quality and style of play that this team can really produce. We just want to see it more consistently. And now there's hope. We're getting breaks with with some of these other results with other teams, and I think it's there's reason to hope, there's reason to cheer, there's reason to be excited about this squad moving forward. In this last stretch.
Yeah,
That makes me, if I, can you guys hear me?
yeah. Go ahead, Matthew.
Okay. So that makes me think like we had like a 10-day hiatus or whatever, like a break because of the rescheduled game. And it was like so weird. It's like you had 10 days and we like play like that. I know it's the pain is gone away because we went up against Columbus, but I know that red card in the Red Bull game really hurt us because Pozuelo is basically our game changer, and so is Higuain. But it just makes me wonder, like, what were we doing in those 10 days? Like, I just didn't understand. It's like, why are we reverting back? I don't know. I was just very like confused, you know.
I think Miami's always been one of those teams, just throughout our history, that coming off a extended break, whether it be an international break or a break like this, we struggle coming out of that. And whether it be because we get complacent or because all these players thrive off of game time to develop chemistry with each other, for some reason we've always struggled with coming out of a break. And saying that is worrisome considering after Saturday's game in DC, Miami will be going on a 12-day break for the September international window. And we'll, after that, have everything to play for. And in that, Miami will have everything to play for in these final four games. And it almost favors them, these final four games. We've talked a lot about Miami travels to DC this week. DC is one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst. Yep, they are currently the worst team in the league. But at the same time, you can never underestimate a team like that. They're going to be hungry because, you don't want to be branded the worst team in the league. And, just this past weekend, they played RSL, who's a playoff team in the West, to I believe, 0-0 draw. So, as much as that is a must win and a should win for a Miami team that's aiming to make the playoffs, it's not going to be one that's going to come easy to this Miami team. And then following the international break, Miami goes to Toronto in what should be a tough game, but Toronto is effectively at this point out of the playoff picture. They sit on only 34 points with 3 games remaining. I believe if Columbus wins this weekend, then Toronto will be effectively out of the playoff race and will be eliminated. So it'll be interesting to see how they play with players like Lorenzo Insigne, uh, Federico Bernardeschi, who have never really had that problem in a league that they've played in. They've never been able to say, oh, we're done. We're not catching up. We're not making the playoffs. We're eliminated. So it'll be interesting to see how they play. And then obviously Wednesday, October 5th, Miami plays at home to Orlando, the rescheduled game from earlier this month. And then Sunday, October 9th, on MLS Decision Day at 2:30 p.m., Miami plays Montreal, one of the top teams in the East, and who have already clinched a playoff spot in the season finale.
And to kind of go back to Matt's question and the point that you made about this team having struggles after long layoffs, I think one of the things that probably doesn't get talked about enough is the fact that this season and a lot of last season, but this season in particular, there hasn't been a consistent 11 on the field, game in, game out, where we know that these are the 11 that are going to start, just nail down starters. And so, the switch from Drake to Marsman, the injury to Lowe, the fact that McVay has basically been nailed down on that left side, but then moving him inside, with the absence of Lowe and then bringing Gibbs back in. I think that like there's an aspect to the squad that there's an instability, and that instability in the back, I think, really impacts the ability of Gregory and Mota to feel comfortable, to press forward, and to create, to progress the ball, get it to Pozzuelo, to the wingers, and to really push. And I think that that's kind of what we had been seeing, in these last few games. Um, I think getting Drake back, getting that consistency back, you started to see them find their rhythm again. But it is a concern, that international break, and the fact that most of the team is going to get rested, but you know Yedlin's going to go out. He's probably going to play one of those matches, maybe a half, maybe a full game. So he's not going to be completely rested coming back, but that is, the matches that follow that are going to be, absolutely critical potentially.
Yeah, and on top of that, DeAndre Yedlin is going out and has been called up to the U.S. men's national team. Robert Taylor has been called up to the Finnish national team for their, I believe, Nations League matches. And Damian Lowe, despite being currently injured for Miami, has been called up, and if he's healthy and if he's able, will probably be expected to play for the Jamaican national team as they play Argentina in New York. So, that will be a big part coming out of this break. Is while the vast majority of this team will be rested, three players who are arguably day in, day out starters, maybe Chris McVay a little bit less, uh, not Chris McVay, Robert Taylor, uh, are going to have played games during this 12-day span. So it'll be interesting to see how Miami deals with that, especially as they go away from home to a dangerous Toronto side.
And the point you made about Toronto with, the Italians coming in and not being used to basically calling it a season, a few weeks before the end. Um, I think it helps us. It helps us that they may not have much to play for. Bradley maybe wanting to give them a rest. They've had a long season, because they transferred in the summer. And try some things out, and see what he has for next year as far as youth and depth. And then Montreal, having I believe they locked up the playoffs. Um, so now they have no incentive to go all out on decision day. So I mean, those two things do really break for us, in the event that we can put ourselves in a position to control our destiny, at that time.
It's going to come down to Orlando. I have a terrible, terrible feeling. It's going to come down. Orlando will be in like seventh place. We'll be in eighth. It's for the season. I have such a terrible, terrible feeling. It's just going to come down to Orlando, and it's that my heart is gonna be pounding the whole match. It's gonna put heart attack herons to a whole new level if that happens.
Well, and we've talked a lot about, especially over this past season, and finally having the U.S. Open Cup back, about how Miami and Orlando have never really had that defining match. That match that makes you say, yeah, this is a rivalry. And it's looking increasingly likely that that match on October 5th at home has the potential to be that match. It very, very likely will be the match that decides which one of Miami and Orlando makes the playoffs and which one's sitting at home uh, during the winter break. So it'll be, for me at least, very interesting to see if that's the match that really takes the Miami Orlando rivalry to just the next level.
And to that point, I mean, they're going to be coming into that game on 2-3 days rest. I think they play on the second against New York City, and that's a game that they have to win. So they'll be coming off of the international break as well, but they'll have to probably maximize their effort to get a win or a result in that game. And maybe we can take advantage of that. If it breaks, if it breaks for us, it would be it. There's an opening there, and I'm not confident in that in Orlando being a consistent team, just like I'm not confident in Miami being a consistent team. That we could probably expose them in that game with down rest, maybe coming off of a bad result, get into their heads and have that real kind of this is what creates the true rivalry moment.
Yeah, and I agree to that. And to your point, Orlando does play on Sunday, October 2nd, while Miami does play 2 days prior to that. They play on Friday, September 30th against Toronto. So Miami will be the more rested team going into that. And arguably, Miami will be the hungrier team. Orlando this year, regardless of if they make the playoffs or not, will have that U.S. Open Cup trophy to point to and say, we succeeded this year. We won the first ever trophy in club history. We succeeded. So I do think that coming down this stretch, we saw tonight alone with Orlando playing Atlanta at home, or Orlando didn't look that hungry. They weren't really pushing and pushing and pushing. And whether that's part of this post US Open Cup hangover or part post getting absolutely pounded by Philly over the weekend, it'll be interesting to see just how Orlando handles their kind of stretch to the finish as they play all Eastern Conference opponents. They play Toronto, NYCFC, us, and Columbus in their final four matches. So it'll be interesting to see if they maybe take their foot off the gas a little bit here. And I'll say that we've already succeeded this season. We're good. If we don't make the playoffs, so be it.
Yeah, I don't think we can expect them to say that to kind of come in with we have a trophy, we're good. I think that it matters for them to make it into the playoffs too. But they have a much tougher stretch. I mean, Columbus is going to be fighting. New York City is going to be fighting to keep home field advantage. We're going to be fighting. So it just it's a little anxiety inducing trying to game theory it out, but it is it's what we want. I mean, for me personally, coming into the season, I didn't expect this to be a playoff team. I was going to be happy with a team that showed me life, that showed improvement with the roster turnover. See what we have. Can this staff build a roster and can get these guys to play together and be competitive? And we saw that, and I'm happy. So, my preseason checklist has been fulfilled. All of this moving forward for me is gravy. I obviously want us to make the playoffs, and I think that this team can and has shown enough that they deserve it. It's just I just don't want them to get in their own way, and that's really kind of where I'm at with looking at the next few matches. Moving forward is just all of this is just I'm proud of these boys, and I think the fans should be excited about it.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And it's crazy to think that theoretically and mathematically, Miami even still has a shot at home field advantage in the playoffs. It's a long shot. It would require us basically winning out and NYCFC losing out. But I never thought I'd be sitting here with 4 games left in the season saying we control our own destiny on whether we make the playoffs or not. If you asked me that at the beginning of the season, I would have said, well, probably hell no. And that this team was closer to the wooden spoon than making the playoffs. And yet, here we are. We're in the race for the playoffs. We control our own destiny. And we sit in a relatively good position. And it'll be interesting to see just what Miami's able to do with that down this stretch run.
So, looking forward to this weekend, obviously, you already stated DC is absolute bottom of the tier. Wooden spoon basically is locked up for them. But I don't want to. I don't want to look past this game because we have to win it. And I don't, I mean, just like Chicago, for a lot of people, myself included, thought that that's a must-win game. This is a team that can't score goals, hasn't been scoring goals, and what do we go? What do we do? We lay an egg, and they drop 3 on us. And I just need this team not to look past this weekend in DC. It's going to be muggy. We're used to that. But I just want us to control this game, show our skill, show our talent level, and get out of there with 3 points and move forward.
Yeah, and looking at DC, they are bottom of the barrel team. They have 1 win in their last 10 and 3 draws in their last 10. That's pretty horrific, and that just shows that this should be a game that Miami should be able to, if they're truly a playoff team, go into, dominate, and win with ease. But if you take a closer look at DC's form, out of those losses that they've had, they held LAFC to a 1-0 loss. They held New England to a 1-0 loss. They played Atlanta in, if I remember correctly, a thriller and a 3-2 loss. And they even beat NYCFC just a couple of weeks ago. And granted, NYCFC, not a great team right now. I think they are winless in their last 5. This DC team still has a ton of talent on them and could surprise, especially with somebody like Wayne Rooney as their coach and Taxi Fontas and newest addition Christian Benteke all available for them.
Yeah, I can easily see this DC game being sort of a trap game. The guys are going to be a little relaxed. They're going to go out there, who knows what their mentality is going to be. But I truly hope it's not the trap game that I think it's going to be, kind of like what happened with Chicago.
Yeah, and I mean, at the beginning of the year, DC was playing pretty well. I mean, they were scoring goals. I mean, they had multiple 2-3 goal games. They were leaky defensively, but I mean, they obviously had attacking talent and an attacking identity. Now, with the coaching change, that locker room has. I don't think they've recovered really since New York put 4 on them in May, and then they run into the buzzsaw of Philadelphia, who is just, I mean, taking them to the woodshed in a way that no team has been treated in this league in its 25-year history. So I think that obviously their morale isn't going to be high, but it is absolutely Don a trap game, and we cannot look past it. I know Rooney has been playing around with bringing up a lot of youth players. He's made comments in the media that these guys have earned it. If there's a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, I mean, he's giving guys opportunities to test them out and to see what he has before he goes and builds this team this winter, into something that he really believes in, that we have to worry about next season. But we just there's not a lot of tape on some of these guys that we might be playing against, and we know that we've struggled with young DC players in the past. I mean, last year I can't remember the fullback's name who went out to Germany this season on a transfer, but I mean he gave Morgan fits in both of those games last season, and so they have talent. They're professionals, but we gotta do what we can to win.
Not
Yeah,
to mention, those young guys are going to be hungry. Like,
exactly.
he started to fit it's like I don't know. I guess for example's sake, like Noah Allen getting his first start. I know it already happened, but it's just they're gonna be hungry to show Wayne Rooney that they have what it takes to be an MLS level, regardless if they're going to the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I can see these guys. It's just, I mean, what do they got to lose? So these guys, I can definitely see them just go all out, be a playoff spoiler.
Yeah, and to further on that, I mean, DC just this past weekend against RSL started I believe, 15 or 16-year-old center back who helped them on their way to a 0-0 draw against RSL. And that just shows that while DC, by starting a 15-year-old this late in the season, has said, we're out of it, we're not making the playoffs this year, let's test some new guys out. Those new guys are going to be hungry. They're trying to prove themselves not only to the fans, but to Wayne Rooney, and saying, we deserve to be on the first team next year. You signed us for a reason. Let us have our shot. So it'll be very interesting to see how some of those new young guys play for DC in, like Don said, what really could be a trap game for Miami. We could go into this kind of with our heads held high and say, we just played and won the first ever 2-day long game, and now we're playing the worst team in the league, and could very easily and very quickly get trapped in that mentality and let themselves down. I don't think it will happen. I think this Miami team has proven, not recently, but over the course of the season, that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I think Tuesday night and, Wednesday morning is a fantastic example of that, where the going gets tough, the tough get going, and Miami's able to, by any means necessary, squeak out a win. So it'll be interesting to see what they do going into DC, and just how well they play, and who's going to step up for Miami this time.
I'll tell you what, seeing Pipita and Pozuelo, those guys being in form again, they seem to be in the same page again. That gives me a little hope. That makes me feel a bit better going into the game.
And go ahead,
Sorry,
Matt.
go ahead. So what I was gonna say was, I think we should treat this game like complacency. We can't have the complacency mentality, but I think we should just go in this game how we ended off Columbus, right? No nonsense. Don't do the five in the back crazy stuff that we've done in the past, where we get defensive and then we concede a goal or something like that, because we are pretty weak defensively. We're shaky. But what I'm saying, like how we ended Columbus, was he put in, I think we had Pozuelo, Duke, Lassiter, Taylor, Higuain, and Campana all playing. Like, we just need to just put that game to bed early. I know Like, if you've heard me say before, I just wish this team would win a game by more than one goal. And I think I don't want to have the complacency mentality, but it's just like I really think that this could be finally that game, or try to make it that game at least. Try to go all out attack and just put that game and just put that game to bed early. That's just all I want. That's all we need. We need just get those 3 points no matter what.
And to that point, Matthew, I mean, the how that team came out of the locker room in the second half, they controlled the first 12 minutes. They just dominated, and you saw Robert Taylor getting involved out on the wings. You saw Pozzuelo getting involved and being creative in the middle and combining with um, both Gregory and Higuain. That we were creating space. We were playing attractive soccer, and then the pendulum swung back. We got defensive. Columbus took their chances, and then we changed the formation. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Campana came on for Lassiter. And so we essentially, from what it seemed to me in watching the replay this afternoon, it was almost as if we were playing a 4-4-2 with two strikers. Campana was patrolling more to the left hash. Higuain was patrolling more to the right. And that combination was working really well with Pozzuelo. I mean, after Higuain's goal, there was another opportunity where Pozzuelo takes the shot, but if he had slid the pass in, Campana was running into space. He had read the defense well, was getting in behind, and he would have been in on goal. And that was the one thing we have not seen. We have not seen those two players play together yet, and that was really encouraging. And I think that there is an opportunity here, with DC, given their run of form, to do exactly what you're talking about, Matthew, and score multiple goals. I mean, I would be happy. I would be happier watching this team win 4-3 than win 1-0. And a lot of because the anxiety that comes with the 1-0, I just don't trust the defense. Now, if it was locked down, that's a completely different story. But there are weapons here, and I want to see us use them.
You would actually be correct about that formation that you mentioned. If you look at Phil Neville's press conference, I was watching it like this morning. He said he switched to like some sort of 4-4-2 diamond up there, and he was just name dropping players. Like, if anyone, like, well, once this traveler chat is all done, I highly suggest looking at that at the post game interview, because he was dropping tactics like crazy. I've never heard of that from him. I've never heard him drop formations, drop tactics, drop names. Like, it was literally like a tactics talk with him for about 5 minutes answering a question. So yeah, just a side note, I guess.
Well, and it's interesting. I've kind of yelled for a little while that a 4-4-2 diamond really does fit this team with any combination of the back four. But if you play, let's say, Malta is the six, Gregory is one of the eights, Duke is another one of the eights, and then Pozuelo in front of them as the 10, and then Gonzalo and Campana both up front. That's not only a ton of creativity in the midfield from Gregory, Duke, and Pozuelo, but it's two truly lethal attacking threats up front in both Leo Campana and Gonzalo Higuain. And we saw DC struggle with that, just on the goal that Gonzalo scored to win it. We saw DC really tracking Campana, who is making another run into the box as, the secondary player. They thought that Gonzalo was going to play it across Campana. And even Eloy Room, Columbus's goalie, was cheating off his post, which allowed Gonzalo to go near post. And he was expecting the pass to Leo Campana. So I really like that formation. I question how it holds up over 90 minutes, especially because I think a goal like the first goal that we saw yesterday doesn't happen in that formation because Campana isn't that super speedy player that somebody like Ariel Lassiter is. But I'd be elated to see that formation come out as the starting lineup on Saturday and on Sunday in DC.
And it's been proven already. Those four in the middle, that's their best midfield combination. I think Duke playing next to Pozuelo just really helps Pozuelo's game a lot moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that one of the I'm like I like the idea of the diamond and with that foursome in the midfield. My my issue is we lose so much athleticism when we move into that formation because now we're relying on Higuain and Campana to stretch a defense, and they just can't do that consistently. I mean, neither one of them has that in their bag, and then we lose the opportunity to blend in a player like Robert Taylor, who, when he gets involved, is one of our best players on the pitch. But if he disappears like Morgan would disappear last season, it's useless. Like his skill is just being wasted. Um, and then on the other side with Lassiter, if Lassiter isn't making those lung busting runs and really stretching the defense, what's his value? He's not great on the ball sometimes. He's not the best finisher. His value is his athleticism. And in the diamond, one of the things that I worry about is, having Duke and having Pozzuelo there gives you the creativity in the middle. The one thing that we don't see enough of is Mota or Gregory progressing the ball, taking the ball off of somebody, intercepting a pass, and then driving it forward, putting the opposing team on their heels, and taking it into space. They're much more comfortable playing a pass than they are driving into that space and forcing the defender to commit to them because Gregory does that laterally, but he doesn't do that going forward towards the goal. And I'd really like to see us do that more often because I think that would make us more dangerous and would utilize the skill of Pozuelo and Duke more efficiently if we had someone who was more comfortable in that kind of on the ball progression.
I feel like we used the 4-4-2 diamond was because Columbus is very weak on the wings, and doing that 4-4-2 diamond just doesn't give you wingers, and it leaves a lot of space in behind for the fullbacks. So it just depends on the team. I don't believe it should be. Thinking about it, I don't think it should be what we start with. I think we should start with like a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. I think like a 4-4-2 diamond would be great to use 75-minute plus. When all the substitutions are made and we just need that goal. You know what I mean?
And also to keep possession. I think that's another aspect of it.
Yeah, I think the big thing with that 4-4-2 diamond is it's truly more of a possession-based game formation. It's the type of formation where you're focusing on keeping possession in the midfield, building, and then playing one of your two strikers. My biggest issue with the formation is the lack of wingers and the lack of somebody like Lassiter, who, like Jorge said, he may not be the best on the ball. He may not have the best finishing, but he has the ability to run 70 yards straight, nonstop at full speed and get in behind a defense at a pace that nobody can catch him. And right there alone, stretch the defense and make room for somebody like a Pozuelo or a Campana or a Gonzalo Higuain to catch up and then have acres of space to work in because he pulled the defenders away.
Okay, but so how good is DC's defense? How good is their back line? What's their goal differential? I mean, I don't know if you guys have these stats on the top of your head, but I mean, just how effective do you think their defense is going to be?
So
I think their goal differential is like negative 27 or something like that.
God
it's
Then
damn.
again, like
it
more than half of it was because of Philadelphia just destroying them 7-0 and 6-0.
so it's currently negative 30.
Oh,
And Matthew's right. 13 of that negative 30 comes from Philadelphia alone, which is just insane to say. But at the same time, this DC team has only scored 32 goals on the season and has allowed the most in the league with they've allowed 62 goals this season. That is the most in the league by looking at it really quick by 5 goals. Toronto has allowed the second no, it's the most by 1 goal. San Jose has allowed 61 goals. So this DC defense is leaky at best. On a good day, they do know how to shut a team down, but a team that in 31 games has allowed an average of 2 goals per game while only scoring 1 goal per game, that is absolutely dismal.
Yeah, so going back to my original point, I don't think it'll be so detrimental if we start the game with that four man diamond formation in the middle.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at those stats, I'm almost inclined to agree. DC's squad from the past match is weak on the back line. They started a 15-year-old. In the midfield, it's relatively weak. They have a player like Ravel Morrison, and outside of that, Russell Canals, Victor Paulson, and Christopher Durkin. But they're not great at retaining possession. They're not great at scoring, and they're not great at preventing teams from scoring on them. So this game really could be there for Miami, and I do think a possession-based formation like the 4-4-2 diamond will give Miami a lot of chances and give the DC defense a lot of problems in handling up to 4 different attacking goal-scoring players in Campana, Gonzalo, Pozuelo, and Duke.
Yeah, and definitely with Campana with his hold up play, he could still be an outlet, not necessarily as an athletic winger, but still a pretty good presence.
I mean, the more that you guys are starting to convince me, I mean, I just can't get over the fact that they're starting a 15-year-old in the center back
That
pairing. Like
boy
that,
is built, dude. That 15-year-old is built like a 25-year-old.
yeah, but
Like
I
if you
don't
look at him,
care. I
he's
mean, but
huge.
I mean, I'm like, I grew up in Miami. I played with guys who were all world athletes. Like, it's still different. Like, Campana is a man. Higuain is a man. Like, there is, like, he can be built, but he's still figuring out how to live in his body, let alone play, professionally at the highest level in that.
Absolutely.
And so, I think if you put pressure on a player like that, especially with someone who is as skilled one-on-one as Higuain is. Now, he gets dispossessed. We know that, but he is wily. And you put pressure on him with somebody like that, or with a player that can impose themselves physically like Campana can. That's a pressure point that really might need to be exploited.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that if DC does start this 15-year-old center back, they didn't on Tuesday night. I think if they do, you want to put your best players on the pitch, your best attacking players on the pitch, all at the same time to basically overload the league's worst defensive side. And I think the way you do that is playing a 4-4-2 diamond where you can play Pozuelo, Duke, Multa even, Gonzalo, and Campana all at the same time and just threaten that defense over and over and over again. And they're a team that's really proven that, they're going to bend, but not that much before they break. And it takes very little for them to break.
So my thing is, we're talking about all of this. This kind of like makes a lot of sense to us, but at the end of the day, we're still dealing with Neville ball. So what do you think? What do you guys think is going to happen more than likely? Like, do you think he's still going to continue to start Vasilev, or he's going to go to the diamond in the middle?
I think just based off of his press conference late last night that we're probably going to see either this diamond or a 4-4, kind of a fake 4-4-2, 4-4-3 like we saw on Tuesday night, where, we have that technical ability and we have those attacking threats.
You have just remember, it's Neville ball, right? You just never know. You never ever know. It's like a joke that I have with myself that I've expressed with a few people. If you're on Phil Neville's team, there's always one player out of position. Usually it's McVay, but sometimes it's like another player. There's always someone out of position. Always, always, always. And you just never know. Like, look, I won't even be surprised if he puts like a 5-3-2 and just decides, oh, I think today's the game that we're gonna experiment. I don't know if he's gonna do that, but I'm just saying, you just never know with this guy.
I typically agree with that. Neville's been unpredictable in that way. And the announced lineup has never been the actual lineup either. But I think his press conference last night was extremely telling. He talked about, we don't want to play a back three. He said those words verbatim. And, he basically praised this 4-4-2 diamond in the midfield and talked about what it does for this team. So I think, well, yes, it's Neville ball and it, kind of always will be Neville ball. I think he's very much evolving and has figured out this is what works for this team. This is what we need to do. This is how we get the best players on the pitch at the same exact time.
Oh, Mr. Traveler, so what you're saying is we have a chance.
I am saying we have a chance. As somebody called me on Tuesday, I am obviously Harvey Neville. I do have all the inside information at being the coach's son.
Fantastic.
So, I do think that Neville is learning over time. Everybody's been critical of him, especially after a loss. We don't hear anything after a win. But I do think he's learned over time what is best for this team. And he's, on top of that, learned, how do I fit, our true best 11 on the field at the same exact time.
Just to remind all of us, like, just in case not to get complacent,
Hey, Matthew, I think you got dropped.
Tight.
Yeah, he got dropped.
Testing.
Yeah, he's gone. But, I kind of can finish what I think he was going to say, which was along the lines of...
hello?
There he is. He's back.
I'm alive again. this is just like my final thought, just to remind ourselves that just a reminder that Houston Dynamo did win bottom of the Western Conference against the New England Revolution, who was hungry for a playoff spot. Just a friendly reminder, just in case. You just never, ever, ever know.
That was a massive result last night.
Everything went our way last night. Everything went our way.
That was also a crazy game in terms of Houston did score 3 goals, but they probably should have had 6 or 7. And Montreal's goalkeeper, Jord Petrovic, is arguably, and U.S. men's national team Twitter is going to murder me if I say this, he's arguably better than Matt Turner, who New England had before this. So while that was a massive result to us, it really showed just how far this New England team has fallen from setting the MLS points record last season.
Yeah, you're going to get murdered on Twitter after that.
I mean, no, that his shot stopping last night, I mean, really did save them from a truly humiliating scoreline. I mean, there was that one sequence where he stopped 3 shots. All 3 were good shots in a matter. 2 were back to back, and then the third one, rolled off. I think the attacker spun and took another shot at a tight angle, and he saved all 3 of them. He was impressive. He really was.
And it's on a quick side tangent. It's crazy to think how he was brought in as the replacement to Matt Turner. And if you talk to a lot of New England Revolution supporters, they didn't think much of him when he came in, and yet he is arguably the best keeper in the MLS right now. And if I was a member of the media and had a vote on all of the players of the year and all of that, he would get my vote as goalie of the year.
Well, I saw some advanced stats that were posted. I think that he has the best advanced stats, and it was Sean Johnson as second, and then I think Drake was third or fourth on that list too. So, we've got a good one there. But yeah, I mean, he was his whatever the advanced stat was, it was like G minus XG. He was at the top of the league for it.
Yeah, and that's, for me, just crazy to think about. But back to Miami, and we'll try and wrap this up in a little bit so that Jay and Than from Inter Miami Podcast don't have too much to edit down. Miami does go to DC this Saturday in a big match for them, just in terms of this is a match Miami should win. After that, Miami goes on break for 12 days, the international break, with 3 players representing their countries: DeAndre Yedlin representing the U.S., Damian Lowe potentially representing Jamaica, and Robert Taylor representing Finland in the Nations League, before Miami comes back and plays 3 games in 8 days, with Toronto away, Orlando at home, and then on MLS Decision Day, they play Montreal at home, who, as of last weekend, have already clinched a playoff spot. And as the days go by, they are closer and closer to clinch the 2nd seed in the East. So a busy run to the finish. Miami controls their own destiny at this point. At the time of recording, we sit 3 points out of 5th place and only 2 points out of 7th place, with a game in hand on, well, nobody. nobody above us we have a game in hand on outside of like an NYCFC. So a very crucial kind of dash to the finish coming up for Miami. And despite what many of us were thinking as, you know, as early as Saturday, Miami's still very much alive. They control their own destiny. And while the hopes of a home playoff game are pretty much all but gone, Miami very likely could go to the playoffs at this point and play away at a Montreal or one of the two New York teams.
And for the last game of the season, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Orlando plays Columbus on their last match. So we could potentially see either both teams losing points, or at least one of them is going to lose out on all 3 points.
Yeah, and basically at this stage with where we sit, as long as Miami has the same record as Orlando, along with beating Orlando throughout this remaining 4 games for both teams, Miami will make the playoffs. Even if Miami doesn't beat Orlando, that Orlando Columbus game is going to be massive. My bold take is the loser of that game doesn't make the playoffs. So, Miami does have a lot going for it right now, and in my mind, a very good chance of making the playoffs, especially as we control our own destiny, this late in the season.
Yeah, no, I think that's we control our own destiny, and that's the position you want to be in. You don't want to have to rely on other teams and other results to get to where you want to go. I wish we were higher up the table and feeling a little bit more secure, but the reality is we are where we are. We do our jobs, we win, and we continue to play in the playoffs, and we give ourselves an opportunity to go win some silverware, which is what this team wants to do long term. And, we're here for the ride.
I fully agree with that. And I will say, if Miami makes the playoffs, it doesn't matter where it is. I will be at that playoff match. I'm kind of hoping for one of the two New York City clubs because I really don't want to deal with going to Canada. But if it is Canada, I will gladly give them whatever documentation they want from me to get into Canada for that match. But saying that, any final notes, Don, Jorge, anything?
Not much, really. Just really looking forward to the next match, and hopefully the guys are up for it. This hopefully they understand that that this could be a really really bad trap game for them, and so you got to keep pushing forward.
My only final thought is I'm really excited to get to the game on Sunday. I'm going to be there in person, driving in. It's going to be the first game I've actually seen in person this season. I came down for the Montreal game last year, so really excited to see the boys, cheer them on, and hopefully get to go home feeling even better about our playoff chances.
Yeah, I totally forgot that you're going to be there along with Than from Inter Miami Podcast. We'll also be there and quite a few other people. So I'll be sure to meet up with all of you guys. But on that note, thank you to everybody for listening. This has been a special episode of Traveler Chat in coordination and collaboration with the Inter Miami Podcast guys. Be sure to follow myself, IMCF Traveler, on Twitter. Jorge, I don't know your handle off the top of my head.
It's Jorge DTA.
Jorge DTA.
Can't see me.
Some of our special guests in Don Cafecito at Steve Munoz 117. And then I don't know Matthews off the top of my head, but I'll be sure to link them. Be sure to follow all of us. Be sure to follow Inter Miami Podcast. And we'll be talking to you later on. Thank you again for joining us.
Big shout out to Stan and Jay.
Yeah,
Vámonos Miami.
Vamos Miami.
Vamos Miami. And
Let's go, bro. Let's go.